The following is a special video presentation of the Hennepin County Library.
Hi, welcome to a discussion with Dr. Kevin Leman. I'm Eileen Cavanaugh from the Hennepin County Library Program Office, and our guest today is a family psychologist, an author of many best-selling books on children and families, a co-host of a live radio show called Parent Talk, and the parent of 5 children ranging in age from teenage to toddler. So he knows wherever he speaks. Welcome, Dr. Leman.
Good to be with you, Eileen.
How can parents ensure, and I underline ensure, good self-esteem in children?
Well, in bringing up kids without tearing them down, I talk about image insurance. You know, most of us have gone out, we bought different types of insurance in life, whether it be life or home or auto. And I wonder how many of us as parents ever think about the fact that you could probably buy an insurance policy on your child's self-image by simply doing some things right, some basic things right in the home with children. In busy 1990s, parents today have their own agendas. They feel free to drop children, toddlers, off at the kiddie college or urchin university or kiddie kennel, as I like to call some of them, and think that you can drop kids off and let someone else raise your children, and somehow the kids aren't going to come out damaged goods. And one of the things I'm very outspoken about is that if you bring children into this world, you ought to do everything you possibly can to raise them with a healthy self-image, because children are like wet cement. They are very pliable. You can mold them when they're young. You can imprint them. You can put an awful lot of your life into them when they're young. And too many parents, I think, fall prey to the hectic, busy schedule that too many of us have, and don't put in the basics. And when you don't put in the basics, it's a little bit like baking that first cake in junior high school, and you leave out a major ingredient, and what happens to the cake? The cake doesn't taste good, it's like a brick, it falls or whatever. But I think most of us have to really take time to consider that the early years are important. And as you mentioned, I have 5 kids, and one of the things my wife Sandy and I have prided ourselves on is we put ourselves into our children's lives. We're very much a part of their lives. We don't make any apologies for that. So getting good image insurance is as easy as ABC if you'll just follow some basic rules.
And what are the ABCs? I neglected to show this book, and it's a very attractive book, bringing up children.
I wish I knew who those kids were. You know, it's probably
they aren't yours?
No, they're not mine. I don't. I have 5, and they're all pretty and handsome. And I'm wondering who those children are. They're probably the grandchildren of someone who owns an advertising agency in New York City, would be my guess. But who knows? But the ABCs: acceptance. Do we really accept our kids as individuals? I wrote a book years ago called The Birth Order Book, which talks about the differences in firstborns and middle children and babies of the family. Isn't it interesting that 3 or 4 cubs could come out of the same den and be so unique and so different? How come the firstborn in a family is night and day different from the secondborn? And I say to parents that in accepting children, you must treat kids differently. In other words, you grant the birthright to the oldest child. The oldest child should go to bed later than the other, should have a bigger allowance. And again, today, kids will view themselves as social equals. So the littler ones will say, hey, wait a minute, that's not fair. And, you know, I want to be treated just like my older sister and brother. And the reality is that in life, that's not the way it is. When a kid is 16, he can go get his driver's license in most states, and his 14-year-old brother might think that he is equal to the task. Well, I say to the 14-year-old, go on down and beat on the guy's desk and insist that they'll give you your license and see what happens to you. So the reality is that life is going to treat you differently, so treat kids differently, and that's part of accepting them as who they are and don't compare them to others and all that.
I often remember my older sister saying to my mother, well, you're so much easier on Eileen than you were on me. Is that the case with most parents?
Oh, sure.
They mellow out?
Most oldest will come and they'll say things like, Mother, you're not going to let her do that, are you? You never let me do that when I was her age or his age. So that's the kind of things that happens in the dynamics of families today. But, you know, sometimes I get in trouble for saying this, but I really think that raising children is a piece of cake. I don't think it's as difficult as many of the experts have taught us. Many of the experts have warned us about damaging little Buford's psyche. We want to be sure we don't damage his psyche. We want to be sure that we just love, love, love little Harlan. And although love, 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 I wouldn't argue the point, is a wonderful thing, you have to remember that if you love someone, I don't care if it's your mate or your Cocker Spaniel or your 4-year-old child, a member of the ankle biter battalion, you must discipline that child in order to really love them, because discipline is a part of love. And without it, it's not complete. It doesn't work.
Discipline's an interesting word. I remember reading someplace that the root of it means a learner, which places quite a different feel on the word than what most of us think of it as punishment.
Yeah, well, how many of us, that's interesting, Eileen, how many of us grew up with the notion, spare the rod and spoil the child? Well, I love to think about that, because if I was a shepherd and I had a whole hillside full of sheep, in biblical days, I would have had a rod and I would have had a staff. And it's interesting because even in the 23rd Psalm, the words are, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Well, there'd be very little comfort for the sheep if all the good shepherd did was wail them on the side of the head. So you cannot be too authoritarian with children. On the other hand, in the 1990s, look how permissive we are.
Indeed.
Oh, Brittany, would you choose to go to bed yet? No, you're going to watch Jay Leno? Okay, honey. Dad and I are going to bed. Lock up. And the kid's 7 years old. And that might be an over-traumatization for sure, but parents today are far too permissive. So the guarantee is this. If you're too authoritarian with your children, they'll rebel. If you're too permissive with your child, they'll rebel. Okay, wise psychologists, tell us. We're on the edge of our seat. What's the answer? To be in healthy authority over your children. That is to say that my wife and I don't own our children. If you want to look at it, they're gifts from Almighty God. We're charged with bringing them up so they'll become adults someday. So in our household, we do crazy things. We do things like give a 12-year-old the responsibility of paying all the bills in the family for 1 year. They even sign the checks. They even write them out. They don't sign the checks. We sign the checks. But if you want to give a kid a dose of reality, let them pay the mortgage payment. Let them see how much the rent is. Let them have a feeling of what life is really going to require of them. And with that, always balance that with love. And imprint whatever you are, whatever your values are. I don't say accept my values, but whatever your values are as a parent, imprint them on your children when they're young.
You talk about imprinting. Could you say more about that? Because you've tied it to those first 5 or 6 years of the child's life that in your book you talk about so much as being the crucial, important years.
Yeah, you know, in the great state of Minnesota, this would probably be a great place to talk about ducks. With all the lakes in your state.
Or geese.
Yeah, ducks. You know, it's interesting that leave it to a group of psychologists to study this concept of imprinting. And what they did, they took ducks at birth and removed the mother duck and put a basketball on the pond that was controlled by remote. Now, if you can imagine, one of the things we know about ducks is there's a critical period in a duck's life. Right after they're born, well, they will follow whatever they see move. And so the experimenters wanted to see, would this be true of ducks? Would they actually follow these basketballs? And they did. So this concept is called imprinting. And with all of our research today and in the psychological side of life, we haven't paid enough attention to what difference bonding, for example, makes. How much do kids, babies, infants understand from their mother? One researcher calls it a dance, that there's actually a dance, a communication very early between a mother and her child. And we have not taken the time and effort to really study this. My own guess is that those first 18 months are critical, that the first 5 years are obviously formative. Again, I go back to the children are wet cement concept. Again, you cannot abandon your child psychologically, emotionally, physically. There's a study with a fellow by the name of Dr. James Prescott that talks about how important touching is with children. So, again, I would say to you, and I know it might sound a little on the flippant side, but give me a child. Tell me what you want the child to become like, and I'll bet we get pretty close to what the ideal would be. For example, if you raised a kid in Rip-Offville, Minnesota, where everyone was dishonest, everybody's a thief. And then you take this kid at age 12 and you bring him to Fantasy World, Minnesota, where everyone's honest. There's not a thief in town. The question is, how would the kid behave? He wouldn't behave any differently in the new arena of life other than to be very suspect to people who are honest. So in other words, the lifestyle, the way the child looks at life is well established by age 12. So this is what we're up against. And take a look at kids today. They're the gimme generation. They're disrespectful to adults. They're disrespectful to each other. Walk through a junior high school sometime and just listen to the language. You'll be appalled. And because you're an adult, it doesn't make any difference. They show no respect for you whatsoever. So things are out of control in our country, and all of us can point to the school system and violence and television, and all these things are contributing for sure. But we're never going to get away from the basic truth, and that is, as families, parents are the ones that are charged with the responsibility of bringing up kids.
So you're saying if parents want to raise responsible children, they have to make sure they are themselves responsible people.
Yeah, and we're not. We're not responsible people. I highlight in bringing up kids without tearing them down that the key relationship in a family is not between mother and daughter and father and son fishing along the great Mississippi River. I mean, it sounds adventurous, but the real imprinting that takes place is between a father and a daughter and a mother and a son. So for the mom who's raising boys today, if she wants to do her future daughter-in-law a great service, raise a responsible child who is respectful of her. Now, to make it really nitty-gritty for people who are viewing this and saying, my kids are driving me up the wall, doctor, can you help us? I would say, yeah, use what I call reality discipline. It's 10 o'clock in the morning and your smart-mouthed 12-year-old says something to you that's very cutting and it hurts and it is disrespectful. The traditional parent would get in the kid's face and say, do you know who you're talking to? I'm your mother and all that, and there's a big blow-up. I would suggest you wait. Wait for one of those teachable moments, which might be 2 hours later when he comes out and says, come on, Mom, we got to go, and he's decked out in his soccer uniform. And she says, go where? Mom, I got a soccer game. Come on, we got to go. Honey, I'm sorry, the car's not going anywhere. Mom, what is wrong with you? Honey, I think you know what's wrong with me. Oh, you're mad about this morning, aren't you? Well, I don't know if I'm mad, but I am upset. Mom, what, honey? Sorry. Well, honey, I'm glad to know you can say you're sorry and you're forgiven. Mom, what, honey? Can we go to the soccer game now? Now, what's the right answer? No.
No. Next time.
Next time. And so we have these opportunities to really show our children that we are going to hold them accountable for what they do in life. We are going to ask for respect. We're going to give respect. And see, in that situation, we're really respecting the child by simply holding him accountable for what he said or what she said.
Aha, but the stickler in that, I found, is that the parent has to make a sacrifice too.
Yes.
When I took my children to the restaurant and they put a temper tantrum up, we had to leave the restaurant and say, we'll come back some other time when you can have more acceptable manners. But we had to give up our treat at the restaurant too, and I think parents have to be prepared for that.
My oldest daughter is 21, has met the man she's going to marry, is a wonderful kid, and I have to tell you, I wouldn't change Bob one iota. I love the kid, he's great. He's going to be great for my oldest daughter, Holly. But when Holly was 2.5 years old, she saw another little girl throw a temper tantrum. And I looked at my wife and I said, honey, that made me very nervous. She seemed to be studying it and taking notes. And sure enough, before the week was out, we were on vacation. We went into a restaurant in South Lake Tahoe, California. And it was one of those pancake houses that were all built the same. And we were in booth number 1. And I don't know what it is about firstborn children, but it's the little things that drive them up the wall because they're perfectionists and all that. And the pancakes being on the left side of the plate as opposed to the right side could be a major problem. Well, things began to happen. She started to whine and fuss, and I thought, oh no, not here, not in the restaurant, please. And I could just feel it coming. And so the manager brought over a balloon that was going to quell the storm. And of course, at that time, Holly picked up the sugar container with a chrome top on it, and she grabbed it like this and she flipped it backhand and smashed it on the floor. Well, I'll tell you, psychologist father picked Holly up by her left earlobe. I put her under my arm. I'm following the advice in my book, which is remove the child from the scene. I'm going out the doors. The whole restaurant's like E.F. Hutton is talking. And first thing I saw was a trash barrel. And I thought, no, I know I can't do that. I know that's not right. And, you know, I ended up putting her in the station wagon, which was clearly parked on to the restaurant. So we actually looked out the window and saw her in there. I didn't know what else to do. I put her in there and I locked the door and I came back in thinking that this might do it. And the whole restaurant was still quiet. You could hear a pin drop. I turned to my wife. She's crying. And she's looking at Holly, who's now over the steering wheel, arms outstretched, going. And you know, it was a terrible thing. But I can identify what you said. But you know, somehow as parents, we still need to be in healthy authority over our children. Our kids are not going to be robot-like. They're not going to do everything we ask them to do. But I think we have to be prepared to deal with the reality of situations so they do grow up to understand that we are in healthy authority over them.
Going back to the first critical 5 years, what about parents when both the husband and wife work and there's very little time for those first critical 5 years?
Well, first of all, if you interview any parent today and ask them what their problems in life are, their number one problem is their children. Number two is time. They do run hand in hand together. There is more reason for you as a couple who both have to work to really think about how you're going to spend your leisure time, whatever you have. More importantly, in America, we've had psychologists, psychiatrists, family educators tell us that it's good for kids to get involved in activities, and I would be very cautious in this area. I recommend that no kid should be involved in more than 2 activities, because if you have 3 children who are involved in 2 activities apiece, you end up running around your town in your minivan thinking, you know, I'm a cabbie and my minivan isn't even yellow. And you run kids from pillar to post.
And I'm not getting paid for it.
Yeah. And, you know, I would add as an addendum to this that I see kids in private practice who are stressed out at age 7 and 8. Why should a kid, 7 and 8, be stressed out and need psychological help? It says something about our society. Dr. David Elkind, who I have a great deal of respect for, said something in the book, The Hurried Child, you know, that we really need to slow down and be parents and take time and not get on this fast track. There's another fellow by the name of Dr. Archibald Hart who talks about the fact that it's possible in our society to be addicted to our own adrenaline that our own body produces because we're always on the cutting edge. And so we need to slow down, parents, and realize that parenthood does not have to include gymnastics, tap dance, flute, piano. I mean, they're all healthy things. But let the child choose a maximum of 2 things to get involved in. Don't have your kid involved in 5 and 6 things. Slow down. Take time to enjoy your children. Read to your children.
Thank you.
Show them the wonderful world of books and learning. And if you do that for your child, and if you turn off the television, if you're the average parent, this is a sad statistic, and you let your child watch TV, just the average amount, your child will have witnessed, by the time they're 18, 20,000 murders. We live in such a violent society,
And speaking today, shortly after the Waco, Texas massacre, it sort of heightens that whole idea.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that. I was at CNN, about to be interviewed on CNN when they went live to Waco. And I saw this woman who was setting up the spot, and they showed in the background, they showed the fortress, and I saw the smoke come out from it. And it was the strangest feeling to be there. But I was there to talk about bringing up kids without tearing them down. And I later commented to them when we taped the segment after that terrible tragedy. I said, you know, there's a couple things that come to mind. Number one, there was obviously a power struggle in that. Someone asked me what I would do. I would have built a large, big, huge fence around the place, put some sensors on it, and backed everybody off. Sooner or later, they'd be out. I found the irony in them being concerned about children being spanked too much, and then to move in and have the net result be that everybody died, all the children died. And you know, you talk about self-esteem. I wonder how many people would have joined that cult. I wonder how many people would join gangs today if they felt they belonged. We started this interview off on the A's of acceptance, but the B is belonging. And as a parent, make sure that you imprint whatever you are. If you're a Kavanaugh, you tell your kids you're a Kavanaugh. If you're a Leman, hey, we're a Lemans. We stick together. We're a family. You really have to imprint your family and make the kids feel like they belong. I've got to tell you this. I think it's funny. I have a daughter, 21, Holly, and a daughter, Chrissy, who's 20. They're both in college, and they come in. They come in some nights at 12:30 in the morning, 11:30 at night, and they sit in our beds. Well, about that time, the old couple is about done for the day, and they talk with us, and they tell us what's going on in their life. 9 out of 10 times, my wife or myself has to say to our kids, "Listen, honey, this is really good, but can we continue this maybe tomorrow morning?" And I have parents come to me and say, "My kids don't talk to me." And I say, "Hey, you want a good tip? Stop asking your kids questions. You want a great tip. If you want to see a relationship turn around, ask your kid no questions." "Oh, Dr. Leman, I always ask little Jennifer about her day at school." "I'm telling you, Mama, shut up. Don't ask the question. Because I can tell you her answer." "Oh, honey, Jennifer, how was your school today?" "Okay." Or how about to Bruce, the 17-year-old center on the football team? "Where you been?" "Out." "What'd you do?" "Nothing." I mean, stop asking your kids questions, back off, become involved in them more positively than just asking questions, and believe it or not, the kids will start to share with you about what's going on in their life.
In the book, you talk about Cindy, who does as so many of us do. She parents as she was parented. And it's such a universal problem, it seems to me, that all parents perhaps have encountered it. I have found the words coming out of my mouth that I swore I'd never use verbatim from my mother, and I knew I'd never do that when I parented. Is that just a tape playing within us, and how do we change that? It almost seemed to me when I was raising my children as if I was trying too hard.
Yeah, I think a lot of us do try too hard. That's interesting because if I remember right, Cindy grew up with a screaming mother, and she told herself she would never scream at her children.
Right.
And then the day happens that she hears herself and she hears her mother. I mean, it's a frightening thing, but it does show that, like the grain in a wood, the personality is laid out. It doesn't just go away. And if you waste your time watching some of the shows that I appear on, Oprah, and all the rest of them, all those talk shows, you'll hear some shrink on there, some person in my profession say, "Oh, listen, I know the problem. The problem is you need to get in touch with your feelings. And if you get in touch with your feelings, you'll know the right thing to do." And the fact is that you can't go through life following your feelings. So back to Cindy, if Cindy just follows her feelings, she's going to scream and yell. She's got to stop. She's got to find a way to back off, to count to 45, whatever it takes, and to act differently. It's no different than the Vikings quarterback on a Sunday afternoon who's about to take the ball from the center, and he looks left and he looks right. Well, is he looking for chicks or relatives or what? No. He's doing what they call read the defense. He's just seeing where the other team is set up. And sometimes he does something he calls an audible, which is just telling people on the team the play has changed. We're no longer running left, we're going to run right because they have an extra man on that side. Well, that's what we have to do in life. You have to realize you're the quarterback of your life. You have to behave differently. And you say, but what if I don't feel like behaving differently? And I say, hey, use the good brain that God gave you to make good, intelligent decisions about life. So as we bring up kids, I know in our household, we've told our kids, hey, there's creeps out there. There's people out there who say, hey, smoke this, drink this, snort this, it's good for you. And you've got to be able to ferret out among these losers who the winners are in life. As I say, as a daddy, it's been fun to...
And you do have to depend on your children at some point to do their own thinking.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
not going to be there for them always.
But that's why you give responsibility to kids early. And that's why when a kid doesn't clean up their room, you don't get on their case. You simply hire somebody else to do the job for them, pay for it out of his or her allowance. You begin holding them accountable in life. And again, I go back to this, you know, if you're raising a son, Mom, you can do your future daughter-in-law such a great service by holding him accountable.
I love it that you offer the child the opportunity to pay another child to do that task for them, because it sort of relates the it's reality. If I don't want to repair my sewing machine, I have to pay someone else to do it.
Yeah, and so you don't always have to call on the firstborn to do the job either. That's another thing we as parents fall into. And the little schnookies of the world, the little babies of the family, they get away with murder with a capital M. And so I tell parents, hey, even the littlest one who's 7 years old can pick up the dog flops and throw them in the neighbor's yard. Anybody can do that. You don't have to just pick on the firstborn.
I should say in the few minutes that we have left that there's a whole question and answer section in the back of this book that will answer all the questions that you ever wanted to know, hopefully. And there are so many things that I noticed that I felt, oh, I wish I'd known that when I was raising children. So I hope viewers will look at that section especially. And well, I'm going to put you on the spot for the last minute of the show and say, if you could say one thing to parents about how they could raise their children beautifully and in the right way, what would it be in one sentence in 30 seconds?
In one sentence, 30 seconds. Take things in stride, comma. Pick your battles carefully, comma. And walk, not only talk, your values to your children, whatever they are. Imprint them early, because once the horse is out of the barn, it's a little too late.
Wonderful. Let's all do it. Thank you,
Thanks,
Dr.
Ellen.
Leman. Thanks for being with us, and thank you for joining us on A Discussion With.
A presentation of the Hennepin County Library.